A warm welcome to this week's edition of Energy Frontiers, proudly supported by the African Energy Chamber, the continent's leading industry advocacy organization. I am Justina Okechukwu. As always, let's get started with some of the biggest energy news around the continent. In a landmark achievement for Senegal, Woodside Energy has announced the start of oil production from the Sangoma field, marking the first time that the West African country would harness its offshore oil reserves. The Sangoma field development phase 1 is a deep water operation using a state-of-the-art FPSO vessel and a capacity of 100,000 barrels of oil per day. In East Africa, the government of Zanzibar have extended the deadline for companies interested in its offshore oil and gas exploration. The government says potential investors now have until December the 16th to submit bids. That is a 3-month extension of the original deadline. And in Nigeria, the state-owned NNPC Limited has signed a project development agreement with Gola LNG for the deployment of a floating liquefied natural gas offshore Niger Delta. The FLNG is expected to deliver 400 to 500 million standard cubic feet per day of gas to the country. Meanwhile, a Dutch offshore energy company, SBM Offshore, has finalized a deal with Angolan state-owned Sonangol EP to acquire full ownership of the FPSOs Ngoma, Saxid Batuk, and Mondo. At the same time, SBM Offshore has sold back to a subsidiary of Sonangol its equity stake in the Pioneer shipyard for an estimated sum of $40 million. Reconnaissance Energy Africa has announced an update relating to Petroleum Exploration License 73 on their drilling operations in Namibia. And drilling is expected to begin by the end of this month and will take about 90 days. And that's the summary of your energy news headlines. When we return, we get sound bites from the council meeting of the International Renewable Energy Agency in Abu Dhabi. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. Representatives from 105 countries were in Abu Dhabi this week for the council meeting of the International Renewable Energy Agency, or IRENA, which was focused mainly on critical issues that the global energy transition faces. Members of the international body from Uganda, Egypt, and Zimbabwe presented their views on how their countries can scale up and de-risk renewable energy investments towards realizing the SDGs and boost partnerships with private sector entities and the utilities. Take a listen.
Uganda has made significant strides in expanding its renewable energy sector, particularly in hydropower, solar, and biomass. However, accessing finance for these projects remains a critical challenge. The country's experience reflects both the opportunities and obstacles faced by many developing nations in the renewable energy landscape. The key impediments in our regard are: 1, high initial costs. Renewable energy projects often require substantial upfront investment. In Uganda, securing the necessary capital has been difficult due to limited domestic financial resources and cautious foreign investors. 2, perceived risks, and this is something that the director at KPFC also highlighted. Investors perceive high risks associated with political instability, regulatory uncertainty, and market volatility. These risks discourage investment despite Uganda's endowment in terms of renewable energy potential. 3, inadequate financial infrastructure. Uganda's financial sector is not fully equipped to support large-scale renewable energy projects. There is a lack of tailored financial products and services for the renewable energy sector. And 4, limited awareness and technical expertise. Many local financial institutions and investors lack the understanding of renewable energy technologies and their economic benefits, leading to hesitation in funding and apprehension in advancing projects. To further enhance the access to finance for renewable energy projects in Uganda, several other strategies can be employed. Development of specialized financial products such as green bonds, renewable energy funds, and risk mitigation instruments like guarantees and insurance products can furthermore attract investment. Strengthening the technical and financial expertise of local banks and investors through capacity building programs can improve and enhance their confidence and ability to invest in renewable energy products. Ensuring a stable and transparent regulatory framework also reduces the perceived risks for investors, making the country a more attractive investment destination.
Regarding the risking of investment, I would like to highlight that my intervention has 2 different levels, international and national ones. For the international level, in business, we usually say no money, no business. Consequently, I do believe that securing attractive financing is one of the most top parameters, reducing risks in renewable energy market. During the last couple of years, markets affected negatively with the high rates of inflation. As a result, many projects lost its feasibility. I think you may agree that such situation will affect the optimistic vision to triple renewable power and doubling energy efficiency by 2030, and the need to secure more than $4 trillion annually to achieve this target. In addition to that, political instability in different regions also threatens investment not only in renewable energy, but in the development sectors also. Such situation doesn't affect the current plans only also, but its negative effects extend to the future. In other words, it threatens the development of the development phase of emerging technologies such as green hydrogen and its derivatives, and also energy storage.
We are currently being assisted by the African Development Bank to restructure our debt, and that has also been affecting our macroeconomic stability. For that, we have put in place monetary policy measures and also energy sector incentives for private sector participation in the energy sector. We are also dealing with utility credit worthiness, through which over the years our utility had suffered from low tariffs, which have been moved to cost reflectivity following a study which had been done by the World Bank. We are taking these corrective measures to ensure that as we have opened up the sector for private participation, especially in generation, we are then able to attract private sector to sell their power to the utility and be guaranteed some payments. We have gone further to move away from the single buyer model as a policy measure to ensure that other off-takers, including intensive energy users, have direct access to both local and external customers and can trade through the Southern African Power Pool.
Still on energy access, stakeholders say there is a need for governments to utilize regional frameworks and actions at multiple levels to address the continent's energy gaps. During the 2024 annual meetings of the African Development Bank Group, I asked Hanan Mossi, the chief economist at the UN Economic Commission for Africa, for more on this.
We need to utilize these regional frameworks to address one of the biggest obstacles for economic transformation, which is the energy gap that exists in Africa. We have 600 million people without access to energy and electricity out of 800 million globally. So without that, there is not much development that can happen. You need energy to have industrialization, to eliminate poverty. So that will be very critical. So utilizing the regional framework in terms of energy pools, in terms of transmission grids, would be a critical part of that solution. And then at a global level, we need to also make sure that we are getting the level playing field in terms of access to finance. We need a system that is more inclusive and just, and that would require having access at scale to affordable finance. And that's why, this is where the role of the multilateral development banks, just like the African Development Bank here, would be critical.
We are done dreaming of an industrialized Africa. No more enduring long journeys in darkness. No more imagining life without constant power. We are done. We are done. Done tolerating 24 hours without power, load shedding, blackouts, and power cuts. Enough. Imagine a life where our abundant natural resources can't power a generation. We can't cope with that reality. 600 million Africans still lack access to power. We have the solution. It's time to turn imagination into action. African Energy Week 2024 is the platform to implement change, sign deals, and take decisive action. And implement. Join us. Invest in African energies. Energy growth through an enabling environment, and be part of the movement that brings hope to millions across the continent. It's not just about power. It's about empowering lives and giving African hope. Be there to witness the transformation. African Energy Week 2024, where imagination becomes reality. Secure your seat now. Don't miss out on African Energy Week 2024. Visit our website and buy your tickets today. Let's light up Africa and create a brighter future together.
Project. At the time you need to build that project. Sign, baby, sign.
This is Energy Frontiers. Now let's shift gear to the global oil markets, where the International Energy Agency's 2024 oil report paints a picture of a shifting landscape. According to the IEA, while global demand for oil is still rising, it is doing so at a much slower pace than previously expected, which was due largely to the faster adoption of clean energy technologies, particularly electric vehicles. Let's listen now to the key highlights of that report from the IEA Executive Director, Fatih Biro.
And we do expect that looking at the beyond 2024, oil demand growth will continue to slow down, and before 2030 will plateau and then sees a peak. So what are the drivers of this global oil demand growth slowdown? There are many important drivers, and they have been explained and discussed in depth in our an excellent report, Oil 2024. The colleagues who are interested in those details may look at it. But when I look at the report, what are the key drivers of the slowdown of the global oil demand growth? I see three major drivers. The first one is on the transportation sector. The major penetration strong penetration of the electric cars in China, in Europe, US, and more in the emerging countries is a key driver. In one of our recent reports, we said that this year we expect more than 1 out of 5 cars in the world sold will be an electric car, and the other indications we are getting from the market is confirming this number, maybe even slightly higher. And more important than that, that sales number, we also see that China, which is the driver of the electric car penetration around the world, because every second car sold in the world, electric cars in China today, we see that the electric cars are becoming cost competitive vis-a-vis the counterpartners in terms of the internal combustion engine cars. So this is transportation sector, plus, of course, the ongoing efficiency improvements in the transportation sector is another driver. So this is number one driver of our expectation of the global oil demand growth slowdown. The second driver comes from the electricity generation. Today, especially in the Middle East and some North African countries, we see significant amount of oil is used to generate electricity. It's about close to 1.5 million barrels per day, driven by mainly in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and others. And we know that in many of those countries, especially led by Saudi Arabia, there are strong plans in place to replace the oil used for electricity generation by renewables or natural gas. So this is another important driver. Third, and in my view, perhaps the most important driver here for the slowdown of the global oil demand growth comes from China. Dear colleagues, I would say nobody who wants to understand what is happening in the energy markets can afford not to see the change of economic growth prospects in China. When it comes to oil markets, in the last 10 years, about 60% of global oil demand growth came from China alone. And at that time, Chinese economic growth in the last 10 years increased on average slightly higher than 6% per year. And now we assume, and many international institutions, Chinese institutions, everybody expects a slowdown of the Chinese economic growth.
And finally, on Energy Frontiers, ahead of the African Energy Week 2024, due later from the 4th to 8th of November in Cape Town, South Africa, the African Energy Chamber is set to host the Lagos Energy Roadshow on June 25 for an investment and deal-making reception. The Lagos event is aimed at re-establishing the company's commitment to Nigeria's oil and gas and energy sector, while showcasing the dedicated Nigerian program for the African Energy Week. Full program details can be found on the AEC website at www.aecweek.com. And that's the package of Energy Frontiers for you at this time. We appreciate your making the time to watch the show at all times. Remember to follow the program on Frontier Africa Reports website, like all the video editions, send in your comments, and subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us as well across all our social media handles as indicated on the screen. I am Justina Okechukwu. I'll see you soon.